In 1950, Walt Disney had a problem. He had created the most valuable intellectual property in the world, Mickey Mouse, but he owned only Mickey. He didn't own the theaters showing his films. He didn't own the distribution networks. He owned content. Everything else owned him. 30 years later, in 1980, Disney was still fighting the same battle. The company owned the content but couldn't control the value. In 1984, Michael Eisner became CEO. By 2006, Disney had acquired Pixar for $7.4 billion. By 2012, Disney had acquired Lucasfilm for $4.05 billion. By 2019, Disney had acquired Fox's entertainment assets for $71.3 billion. In 15 years, Disney spent $100 billion acquiring intellectual property. Not creating it, acquiring it. The archives show this mechanism has been repeated once before. In 1911, when Standard Oil was broken up into 34 pieces, each piece competed to buy refineries in other regions, acquiring distribution networks and supply chains. Disney did the same thing, but inverted. Disney didn't acquire horizontal competitors. Disney acquired vertical control points. Every acquisition moved Disney closer to total ownership of the entire entertainment supply chain. This is the Gilded Archives, where corporate consolidation looks identical across 100 years because the architecture is always the same. The records show a system that started in 1923 when Walt Disney and Roy Disney created a studio to produce animated shorts. They made Mickey Mouse. They licensed it to theaters. The theaters paid Disney a percentage of ticket revenue. The theater owners kept the rest. This worked when there were hundreds of theaters competing. By 1950, Disney realized the problem. They had created the asset, but others controlled distribution. The solution was obvious, but impossible. Disney needed to own theaters, distribution networks, and merchandise rights simultaneously. But Disney didn't have the capital. Disney was stuck. However, in 1953, Walt Disney founded Buena Vista Distribution to handle his own films, ending dependence on outside distributors like RKO. Despite this step toward vertical integration, Disney's profit was still limited by the entities controlling theatrical exhibition and other distribution channels. Then, in 1984, Eisner arrived. Eisner understood something Walt Disney never did. In 1923, acquiring distribution required building it. By 1984, acquiring distribution meant buying companies that already had it. In 1996, Disney bought ABC Television Network for $19 billion. ABC owned broadcast distribution. ABC owned cable distribution. ABC owned advertising relationships with every major retailer. Disney didn't build any of this. Disney bought it. The purchase price was enormous. The value created was larger. Disney now owned content and distribution. The geometry had changed. The architecture of Disney's strategy has 3 layers. First, content ownership. Disney created Mickey Mouse. Disney also acquired Marvel Entertainment for $4.2 billion in 2009. Marvel owned Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America. These weren't Disney creations. They were Marvel creations. But Marvel's owners needed capital. Disney had capital. Disney bought Marvel. Marvel's IP instantly became Disney's IP. Disney didn't improve Marvel. Disney didn't enhance it. Disney acquired the ownership. That's the mechanism. Second, franchise consolidation. After Disney acquired Marvel, Disney released 31 Marvel films between 2012 and 2024. Not Marvel films. Disney films using Marvel characters. Disney controlled the production. Disney controlled the release schedule. Disney controlled the pricing. Disney controlled the merchandising. Marvel's fans couldn't choose an alternative Marvel Cinematic Universe. There was only one. Disney owned it. In 2012, Disney acquired Lucasfilm for $4.05 billion. Lucasfilm created Star Wars. Disney released 5 new Star Wars films between 2015 and 2019. The Force Awakens, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, Solo, and The Rise of Skywalker. Disney controlled every element. Fans couldn't seek alternative Star Wars content. Disney determined what Star Wars was. The acquisition gave Disney the power to define franchises. Third, distribution control through acquisitions. In 2019, Disney acquired Fox's entertainment assets for $71.3 billion. Fox owned content libraries containing 7,000 hours of programming. Fox owned international distribution networks in 100-plus countries. Fox owned production facilities. Fox owned merchandising relationships. Disney didn't acquire Fox's content because it was better than Disney's. Disney acquired Fox to eliminate a distribution alternative. Before the acquisition, Disney had one distribution channel for non-Disney content. It was limited. After the acquisition, Disney controlled Fox's distribution network. Disney could use Fox's channels to distribute Disney content globally. Disney had eliminated a competitor while acquiring its distribution infrastructure. The data reveals the consolidation pattern with precision. In 2012, when Disney acquired Lucasfilm, the film industry had multiple major studios competing: Disney, Universal, Warner Brothers, Sony, and Paramount. After acquiring Fox in 2019, the major studio landscape shifted, with Disney absorbing Fox's operations, while the Big Five structure, Disney, Universal, Warner Brothers, Paramount, and Sony, remained. The consolidation happened through acquisition, not through better filmmaking. Disney didn't acquire Fox because Disney was more innovative. Disney acquired Fox because Disney was larger. Size created acquisition power. Acquisition power created consolidation. The comparison to historical monopoly reveals the mechanism. Standard Oil's consolidation required purchasing competing refineries. Rockefeller bought refineries, shut them down, and consolidated capacity. The consolidation was visible. The closed refineries were physical evidence. Disney's consolidation is less visible. Disney bought companies, kept them operating, but stripped away their independence. Marvel still produces Marvel content. Lucasfilm still produces Star Wars content. But Marvel and Lucasfilm are now Disney subsidiaries. They make the films Disney wants them to make. They release them on Disney's schedule. They distribute through Disney's channels. Now, the independence is gone, but the studios still exist. The consolidation is invisible. By 1984, at the start of the Eisner era, Disney was worth roughly $2 billion. By 2009, Disney was worth $40 billion. By 2024, Disney is worth $150 billion. The valuation increased 75-fold in 40 years, but Disney didn't become 75 times better at making movies. Disney became 75 times better at owning the distribution channels that monetize movies. The growth came from acquisition strategy, not creative strategy. The archives show this happening with precision. Every dollar Disney spent acquiring companies returned multiple dollars in consolidated distribution value. The architect of this strategy was Michael Eisner. In 1984, before joining Disney, Eisner was at Paramount Pictures. Eisner understood something the Disney family never did. In 1923, Disney's value was in the content it created. By 1984, value was in the distribution networks and content libraries. Eisner's innovation wasn't creative. It was financial. Eisner realized that Disney could borrow capital at rates lower than the rate of return on acquisitions. Disney could acquire companies with borrowed money, consolidate their distribution networks, and generate returns higher than the borrowing cost. The difference between the borrowing cost and the return became profit. This created a mathematical incentive to keep acquiring. Eisner acquired continuously. Each acquisition was justified by the mathematical return, not by strategic logic. Every time you watch a Disney film, you're engaging with this mechanism. You choose between Disney, Universal, Warner Brothers, Sony, or Paramount. The choice appears to be about content quality. It's actually about distribution control. Disney films are distributed through Disney channels. Disney channels are owned by Disney. Disney controls pricing. Disney controls release dates. Disney controls the theatrical release window before streaming. You're not choosing content, you're choosing which acquisition strategies output to consume. But there's a second layer the records reveal. If a filmmaker wanted to distribute through an independent channel, that option barely exists. Independent distribution requires capital. Capital requires investors. Investors require returns. The only entities with sufficient capital to guarantee returns are the major studios. The filmmaker must choose between Disney, Universal, Warner Brothers, Sony, or Paramount. Those are the only options with meaningful distribution. The consolidation has eliminated the alternative. The filmmaker has no choice. The audience has no choice. The system is locked. The records show what happened to independent studios. In 2000, there were multiple major studios and numerous regional distributors with meaningful market share, including companies like Miramax, New Line Cinema, and DreamWorks. By 2010, consolidation had reduced the independent landscape as major studios acquired many mid-tier distributors. By 2024, while the Big Five studios remained dominant, active independent distributors like A24, Neon, and Lionsgate continue to operate, though with significantly less market power than the major studios. The consolidation is visible in the concentration of market share, but the mechanism is less visible. The regional distributors didn't fail because they made bad films. They failed because they couldn't compete with Disney's distributed capital. Disney could fund 20 films simultaneously. A regional distributor could fund 3. The scale advantage is permanent. The second mechanism is franchising control. After Disney acquired Marvel, Disney controlled which Marvel characters appeared in films. When Spider-Man remained with Sony, Disney controlled whether Spider-Man would appear in Disney's Avengers films. Disney used the franchise monopoly to force Sony into co-production agreements. The filmmakers didn't choose this structure. The distribution consolidation forced it. The acquisition of Lucasfilm gave Disney similar control. Disney owns Skywalker Ranch. Lucasfilm's facilities, and Star Wars. Disney decides what Star Wars is. The creator of Star Wars, George Lucas, sold the franchise. He no longer controls it. The acquisition transferred ownership to Disney. That transfer of control is the mechanism, not the quality of what Disney did with Star Wars. The power to determine what Star Wars means. We are at stage 5 of the media consolidation pattern. Stage 1 was the creation of valuable IP in 1923. Stage 2 was the realization that distribution was worth more than content in 1950. Stage 3 was the strategic acquisition beginning in 1984. Stage 4 was the major acquisition of Fox in 2019. Stage 5, where we are now, is the distribution oligopoly. The Big Five studios control a dominant share of theatrical releases and box office revenue. Disney controls the largest share, having reached nearly 40% of box office revenue in peak years like 2019. The pattern says what comes next. Stage 6 is further consolidation, where alternative distribution channels face increasing constraints. Streaming services like Netflix, Amazon, and Apple TV are attempting to create alternatives, but they still require access to theatrical chains. Disney owns or controls relationships with most major theatrical chains. The alternative distribution is constrained by Disney's control of physical distribution infrastructure. The 3 paths forward require acknowledging the consolidation's extent. First, accept the consolidation. Disney controls a dominant share of box office revenue. The company makes films that most audiences want to watch. The consolidation has created efficiency. Fewer studios means more focus on hit films. Hit films are more profitable than mid-tier films. Audiences get spectacle. Disney gets returns. This is structural mathematics. Accepting it means recognizing that media production is now a consolidation game, not a creative game. Most people would choose this trade if offered explicitly. Fewer films that are more expensive and more spectacular versus more films that are cheaper but lower quality. Most don't realize that's the trade because the consolidation is invisible. Second, resist through alternative studios and independent distribution. Streaming platforms attempt to create alternatives. Netflix makes original content. Apple TV makes original content. But streaming is constrained by theatrical distribution. Until streaming platforms can guarantee theatrical release for significant films, they remain secondary channels. The alternative exists, but is limited to specific genres and budgets. Blockbuster films, the ones with billion-dollar budgets and billion-dollar returns, are Disney films. The alternative system can't fund them. Third, position by understanding that content value follows distribution control. If Disney has consolidated distribution, Disney will acquire content to fill that distribution. The acquisition prices reflect the distribution's value, not the content's value. When Disney pays $4 billion for Lucasfilm, Disney is paying $2 billion for the Star Wars IP and $2 billion for the certainty that the IP will generate returns higher than the borrowing cost. The filmmaker or creator has already captured their value. The distribution consolidator captures future value. Positioning within this means understanding that distribution creates value, not content quality. The deeper protection lies in what the archives show always survives media consolidation: authentic audience connection. When distribution is consolidated, the audiences that remain loyal are those with authentic connection to creators, not connection to distribution channels. In the 1950s, when film studios consolidated, independent filmmakers like Akira Kurosawa and Pedro Almodovar created loyal audiences outside the studio system. They didn't have access to studio distribution. They built alternative distribution through international film festivals and critic networks. When distribution channels shifted in the 1980s, those alternative distribution networks persisted. Direct audience relationships always survive consolidation. Manufactured franchise success doesn't. The archives show this consistently. Disney's Marvel films generate returns because decades of authentic comic book creator relationships with audiences created the foundation. Disney didn't create that connection, Disney acquired it. That acquisition will remain valuable only as long as the authentic connection persists. The pattern says, what comes next? By 2030, Disney will attempt to complete the consolidation by acquiring remaining independent production companies. The acquisition will increase their market dominance. Then, at some threshold, when audiences recognize they're seeing formulaic franchise content with no authentic creative voice, backlash will emerge. Audiences will seek alternatives. Streaming platforms and international films will capture market share. The theatrical consolidation will erode. Disney will attempt to acquire streaming platforms to restore consolidation. The cycle will repeat. The current media consolidation is iteration 3 of this pattern. Each iteration will look different. The mechanism will remain identical. You walk into a theater, you see 4 movie options. 3 are Disney properties. 1 is not. You choose a Disney property, not because it's better, because it's spectacular and the distribution made it visible and accessible. The spectacle was created by acquisition consolidation, not by creative excellence. Disney acquired the franchises, the facilities, and the talent. Disney applied capital in distribution. The result is spectacular. You experience the spectacular. You don't experience the acquisitions that made it possible, but the acquisitions are the mechanism. Without them, you would see 8 movie options, not 4. Some would be spectacular, some would be innovative, some would fail. The choice would be yours. The consolidation has narrowed that choice. You experience the spectacle as a benefit. You experience the narrowed choice as neutral, but the narrowed choice is the price of the spectacle. If this pattern revealed something you'd never seen before, subscribe to the Gilded Archives. History's records reveal how media consolidation works. Disney isn't unique. It's one iteration of a pattern that repeats across technology, retail, and finance. Understanding it allows you to see the pattern in the next consolidation, the next acquisition strategy, the next mechanism that narrows choice while appearing to improve quality. The records are specific. The mechanism repeats. The outcomes are predictable. We're just watching it unfold.